The facade of American governance is not just cracking, it has been shattered. We are witnessing a moment that historians, if there are any left to record it, will mark as the definitive end of the era of political theater and the beginning of a terrifying reality. For decades, the ruling class in Washington has operated on a tacit agreement: protect the system, protect the secrets, and above all, protect the illusion of stability. But that agreement has just been incinerated. A federal judge has done the unthinkable. They have blown the doors off the classified documents case against Donald Trump. We are not talking about leaks to the press. We are not talking about the usual whispers in the back corridors of power. We are talking about sealed evidence, the kind of material that the national security state usually guards with the ferocity of a priesthood guarding its temple, being officially unsealed and handed directly to Congress. And the reaction has been instantaneous and visceral. To understand the panic gripping Congress, we must look at the specific nature of the charges. We are not dealing with a simple bureaucratic error. The media often frames this as a dispute over paperwork. That is a lie. It is a distraction designed to minimize the gravity of what Special Counsel Jack Smith has uncovered. The indictment, voted on by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, charges Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, specifically the willful retention of national defense information. Let us parse that phrase, willful retention. This implies intent. This implies that the president knew he was in possession of material that could endanger the lives of American intelligence assets, compromise military strategies, and expose nuclear vulnerabilities, and he chose, consciously and deliberately, to keep it. This is the hubris of the imperial presidency stripped bare. In the mind of Donald Trump, the state does not exist separate from his will. The laws that govern the handling of classified material apply to the little people, to the whistleblowers like Reality Winner or Daniel Hale, who are sent to prison for exposing war crimes. But for the emperor, these documents are merely trophies. They are props to be waved around to impress guests or leverage to be held for future deals. The unsealed evidence reveals a conspiracy to obstruct justice that is breathtaking in its clumsiness and its corruption. The charges detail a scheme to conceal. We see allegations of withholding documents, corruptly concealing records, and concealing documents in a federal investigation. This is not passive negligence. This is active criminal intent. The timeline matters. The unsealed files show that the National Archives began demanding these documents in May 2021. For over a year, there was a dance of deception. Documents were moved. Lawyers were allegedly misled. False certifications were signed. The indictment alleges that Trump personally directed the movement of boxes to hide them from his own attorney, and by extension from the FBI and the grand jury. This is what has shaken the foundations of Washington. It is one thing to break the law. It is another to engage in a sustained, multi-year conspiracy to deceive the Department of Justice while holding the highest office in the land. The evidence that has been unsealed links this behavior to a broader pattern of lawlessness. It connects the hoarding of documents at Mar-a-Lago to the chaos of January 6th. It pulls on threads that reveal a mindset where the preservation of power justifies any action, legal or illegal. When Congress saw this evidence, they didn't just see mishandling, they saw betrayal. They saw a president who exposed the nation's most sensitive secrets to anyone who happened to wander through a social club. The indictment speaks to the scope and gravity of the crimes. These words were chosen carefully by Jack Smith. Gravity implies weight, it implies consequence. We are talking about the potential compromise of human sources, spies working for the United States who could be executed because their identities were sitting in a cardboard box in a bathroom. The unsealed files answer the questions that prosecutors have been asking for years. Why did he keep them? What did he do with them? Was there intent to obstruct? The answer, according to this indictment, is a resounding yes. This situation connects to everything. It plugs into the allegations of coordination behind the scenes. It opens doors for Congress to ask, who saw these documents? Were they used as leverage in business deals? Were they shown to foreign nationals? Once you open sealed files in a case of this magnitude, you do not uncover a single scandal. You uncover an ecosystem of corruption. You find the connective tissue between the Trump organization, political allies, and potentially foreign actors. This is why the word arrest is being whispered. The acts described in the indictment are not just impeachable, they are incarcerable. Under the Espionage Act, the unauthorized retention of defense information is a serious felony. For any other citizen, the FBI would have already kicked down the door and placed them in handcuffs. The only thing protecting Donald Trump is the office he holds. But the unsealed evidence has stripped away the political armor. It has laid bare the reality that the President of the United States may be a criminal defendant in waiting. The sheer volume of the evidence, 37 counts against him specifically, suggests that Jack Smith did not bring this case lightly. He brought it because the evidence was overwhelming. He brought it because the violation of the rule of law was so flagrant that to ignore it would be to admit that the law no longer exists. The intelligence community and the armed forces, as Jack Smith noted, dedicate their lives to protecting this information. To treat it with such cavalier disregard is an insult to every person who serves. But to Trump, they are just employees, and the secrets are just leverage. This is the mindset that Congress is now confronting, and it is terrified of what it might find next. In Washington, bipartisanship is usually a sign that the war machine needs funding or that the banks need a bailout. It is rare to see bipartisanship in the pursuit of justice, yet that is exactly what this unsealed verdict has produced. We are witnessing a fracture in the Republican Party that is significant not because they have suddenly developed a conscience, but because they have realized that the ship is sinking and they do not want to go down with it. The reaction of Representative Jamie Raskin is expected. As a Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, he understands the mechanics of these files. When he went on X, formerly Twitter, and stated that the Department of Justice couldn't simply sit there and pretend nothing was happening if there was actual criminal conduct, he was issuing a warning. He wasn't calling for a show trial. He was demanding that the institution of the DOJ function as it was designed. His message was clear. If the evidence says what we think it says, the department has a duty to act. But the real story, the earthquake that signals a shift in the tectonic plates of American politics, is the reaction from the Republican side. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, flat out stated that sealed files cannot be used as a shield for corruption. She said, "The American people deserve the truth, no matter how high the corruption might reach." Stop and think about the weight of that statement. A sitting Republican senator is arguing that the public has a right to know information that could destroy a president from her own party. In the tribal warfare of modern Washington, this is heresy. The normal script is to circle the wagons. You deny, you deflect, you delay, you attack the prosecutor, you call it a witch hunt, you do not pick up a megaphone and demand sunlight on your own leader. So why is she doing it? Why are Republicans breaking rank? It is because the evidence in those sealed files is not just mildly embarrassing, it is catastrophic. It suggests that the contents are so deeply troubling that even those who would naturally want to protect the party brand cannot defend it. They are looking at the evidence and realizing that this is indefensible. Murkowski's statement tells us that there is something in those files that crosses a red line. It suggests that the corruption reaches so high and is so blatant that to remain silent is to become an accomplice. She is willing to risk blowback from the MAGA base because she believes that the survival of the institution is at risk. This is the perfect storm from a legal standpoint. You have sealed evidence exposed, you have judges forcing transparency, you have Democrats demanding prosecution, and now you have Republicans admitting that truth is more important than loyalty. When the Praetorian Guard starts to turn on the emperor, you know the end is near. Congress is an institution that thrives on inertia. It hates to move fast. Yet, within hours of seeing these records, they were calling for action. This tells us that the evidence of criminality is not ambiguous. It is stark. It is undeniable. The bipartisan calls for concrete action and the use of the word arrest suggests that the lawmakers are seeing evidence of a crime in progress or a conspiracy that is so vast it threatens the stability of the government itself. We must also consider the role of the Department of Justice in this shift. In January 2025, the DOJ began submitting paperwork to hand this report to Congress. That was the turning point. The department, usually so protective of its secrets, decided that it could no longer hold this burden alone. They effectively said to Congress, "You need to see this." They shifted the weight of this knowledge onto the legislative branch. And now that the courts have unsealed it for the public, the pressure is uncontainable. This bipartisan revolt is driven by fear. Fear that the president has gone rogue. Fear that the reckless handling of classified intelligence has exposed the nation to foreign adversaries. And fear that if they do nothing, they will be swept away by the historical reckoning that is coming. For Trump, this is the nightmare scenario. He thrives on partisan conflict. He knows how to fight Democrats. He knows how to rally his base against the radical left. But he does not know how to fight a fire that is burning inside his own house. When Republicans like Murkowski start talking about corruption reaching high, they are stripping away his political cover. They are signaling to the establishment that it is time to cut him loose. This is not political theater. This is the system attempting to purge itself of a malignancy that it can no longer control. The unsealing of these files has forced everyone to show their cards, and what we are seeing is that for many in Washington, the limit has finally been reached. We must conclude by looking at the context of this crisis. This is unfolding in the middle of a second Trump term. We are not discussing a retired politician fighting legal battles from a golf course. We are discussing the sitting president of the United States operating from the Oval Office while the sword of Damocles hangs over his head. The timing makes everything volatile. The administration is trying to govern. They are trying to pass laws, manage the economy, and negotiate with foreign leaders. And suddenly, right in the center of the executive branch, a political bomb has detonated. The unsealed verdict has cast a dark cloud over the entire presidency. Legally, the situation is perilous. President Trump is now governing while under the active scrutiny of a Congress that has seen evidence of his alleged crimes. His agenda is paralyzed. How can he negotiate a treaty when Congress knows he allegedly mishandled the nation's most sensitive secrets? How can he demand loyalty from his staff when the indictment details how he allegedly directed his subordinates to lie for him? The authority of the presidency relies on a certain level of deference from the other branches. That deference is gone. The courts have stripped away his secrecy. Congress is stripping away his impunity. We are watching the breakdown of the executive's ability to function. This is not a story that will fade with the next news cycle. The evidence is now part of the public record. It is official. It is real. It is not an anonymous leak. It is a federal indictment unsealed by a judge. This reality changes the physics of Washington. The government's attention has shifted from governing to survival. The political oxygen is being sucked out of the room by the scandal. There are only a few ways this can end, and none of them are stable. Congress can push the Justice Department to prosecute, creating a constitutional crisis of unheard-of proportions, the prosecution of a sitting president. They can launch aggressive impeachment hearings, paralyzing the country for months. Or they can try to pressure him to resign, a prospect that seems unlikely given the man's psychology. The final option, that they do nothing, is the most dangerous of all. If Congress, having seen this evidence, having used words like arrest and corruption, decides to walk away, they will have formalized the death of the rule of law. They will have admitted that the president is indeed a king above the reach of justice. But the bipartisan reaction suggests that this outcome is becoming impossible. The evidence is too public. The statements are too strong. Lisa Murkowski has put her marker down. Jamie Raskin has drawn his line. The system has been forced into a corner. It must act, or it must collapse. We are witnessing the endgame of the inverted totalitarianism I have written about for years. The corporate state usually prefers stability. It prefers a managed democracy where the elites rotate power politely. Trump disrupts that management. He exposes the ugliness of the power structure, and now the institutions, the courts, the DOJ, the Senate are striking back, not to save democracy, but to save themselves. The unsealing of this verdict is a turning point. It is the moment where the political impossible became the political unavoidable. Trump's presidency now operates under a shadow that will not lift. Every decision he makes will be viewed through the lens of this indictment. Every move by his attorney general will be scrutinized for corruption. We are in for a long, dark struggle. The mask is off, the secrets are out. And the question now is whether the American people will be spectators to this collapse or whether they will demand the accountability that their leaders are so terrified to provide. This is Chris Hedges for Chris H. Media. We will continue to monitor the collapse. Stay vigilant.